panelists, I want to thank Joe Lowndy, who's over here, who's the founder of the Joseph Lowndy Human Rights Project, the College of Arts and Sciences, especially Associate Dean Julie Rowan and Dean Lynn Weiner, and our great folks in marketing and PR, especially Laura Janota and Tom Caro, as well as my grad assistant, Nella Teskovska, who's been just fantastically helpful. Our fall series on wrongful convictions was co-sponsored by the Department of Psychology and also by the Justice Council of the Center on Wrongful Convictions at Northwestern University Law School. So I now want to introduce our panelists. Philip Payne, I'm not going quite in order here, I went in alpha order instead, is a 2009 Northwestern law grad who worked in the Center on Wrongful Convictions for 2 of his 3 law school years. He's worked in the Office of the State Appellate Defender in Chicago for the past 2 years, where he represents indigent criminal defendants on appeal from all matter of convictions. Katie Pellick is also an alumna of Northwestern University School of Law and is licensed to practice law in Illinois and currently serves as a law clerk to the Honorable Mary M. Mikva. She is the president of the CWC's Justice Council and a member of the Young Professional Board of the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law. In a previous life, she worked as a journalist. Rachel Steinbach received her JD from Northwestern University School of Law in 2008 and is a lawyer and civil rights at the civil rights law firm Lovey & Lovey, where her practice is devoted to civil rights and wrongful convictions. She completed a 1-year federal clerkship with U.S. District Court Judge Amy St. Eve in the Northern District of Illinois, which is just down the street, and spent 1 year working as a litigation associate at an international law firm in New York City after law school and prior to returning to Chicago to do her civil rights work. In law school, she too worked with the Bloom Legal Clinic Center on Wrongful Convictions, and among the cases she worked on was that of Thaddeus Jimenez, a 13-year-old who was wrongfully convicted of murder and spent nearly 17 years in prison before exonerated. And that's sort of an amazing amount of time to think about, especially for those of you that are in your late teens, early 20s, to think about what it would be like to miss out on the entire period of your life between 13 and 30. Also, in law school, Rachel spent a summer in Tanzania working at a human rights NGO and worked in Malawi to reduce prison overcrowding and their immense homicide backlog. Before law school, she also worked as a policy advisor to U.S. Senator Barbara Boxer. I've left till last my colleague Dr. Sherry Berkowitz, assistant professor of psychology and co-organizer of the wonderful speaker series we held earlier in the fall, as well as my right-hand person on the trip to the UK. Sherry received her PhD in criminology, law, and society from the University of California at Irvine. She studies how people misremember details of events and, in some cases, develop false beliefs and memories of entire events that never actually happened to them. She is especially interested in the application of this work to the legal system. Her other research interests include eyewitness testimony, memory for trauma, false accusations, and wrongful convictions. She's published articles in many top psychology journals and teaches a wide range of courses at Roosevelt, including forensic science, research methods, eyewitness testimony, and law and psychology, and has, in her short time at Roosevelt, already developed a reputation as an excellent teacher and mentor to grads and undergrads alike. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, in working with Sherry throughout the fall and then being together nearly nonstop for the better part of a week in London, I can say with complete conviction that besides being a talented researcher, skilled teacher, and kind-hearted colleague, she's also a marvelous person, patient, positive, caring, engaging, and entertaining. And you couldn't ask for anyone better by your side, whether in a sardine can-like tube train or a 12-mile adventure across the city. It's colleagues like Sherry that make this one of the greatest jobs in the world. And now let me introduce our experts today. We have, and I'm sure that you'll be seeing their names in large font in just a couple of minutes, but we have Amy Lilac, Jonathan Lesnick, Connor Swenson, Diana Akmachian, Eleanor Peck, April Hill, Rebecca Novotny, Alex Dowson, Emily Wilkie, Samantha Bentua, and finally, Brandon Hunt. And did I miss anybody? Seems like such a short list. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just turn things over to our experts now, and thanks again for your attendance and your interest.
Hi guys, please bear with me if my voice falters. I'm getting over a terrible cold. It's not nerves, I assure you. Okay, so my topic, very dear to my heart, juvenile crime in both Chicago and London. The main questions I wanted to focus on today, and in my research, do heavy crime and recidivism, so basically repeat offenses, do those offenders who have a higher risk for wrongful convictions or miscarriages of justice? And other subsequent questions I've come across in my research comparatively, which justice systems, so Chicago and London, which one works more effectively to prevent recidivism? And also, what are the key failings of the juvenile justice system that need to be focused on? Okay, so the key differences basically between the two societies. Here, juveniles are presented as the victim. In London, it's a different case. Many juvenile offenders are seen as the willing participant, so that basically takes away any victimization, therefore resulting in harsher sentences. Another interesting term we came across is the hoodie, which refers to a juvenile who may not even be wearing a hoodie, but is associated with some sort of criminal or dangerous juvenile group, basically. And it's important to consider the social impact of insignificant clothing being deemed criminal. How many of us are wearing hoodies today? How many of us wear hoodies often? To have that item of clothing criminalized is really, really detrimental to the society. And then the juvenile gang structure is different in Chicago and London as well. In the US, many of us have the conception that juveniles join gangs out of desperation, poverty, what have you. Again, following the willing participant social structure. In the UK, juveniles are seen to join gangs because they are willing perpetrators. And then there's been a 20-year trend in the UK of criminalizing juvenile behavior and the strict enforcement of antisocial behavior orders. So basically, children are no longer allowed to be in the street without assuming that they're criminal. Okay, so my key findings for Chicago. The main problem is the juvenile system is flawed, insufficient, and outdated. Excuse me. Some of the problems stem from inadequate detention centers and over-prosecution of several minority races. Illinois had the highest juvenile violent crime arrest rate in 2006, with 1,029 arrests for every 100,000 juveniles. Sorry. This is nearly 3 times the rate of the national average, which is extremely high and reflects poorly on our juvenile justice system. Then also, the recidivism rate moved from 32% to 48%, which is horrifying. Unequal litigation of races, as I mentioned before. Juvenile detention centers being understaffed is the main problem we're facing here. It's been suggested by psychological experts that a caseload of 1 caseworker to 8 detainees is doable, but 10 is maximum, and we're currently at 1 to 24. And the main findings for London, the Ring of Steel is very important here because that's where 60% of the GDP is produced within a 1 square mile radius. And these areas are highly policed, so obviously children in these areas are extremely policed. Let's see. The main problem here is obviously the rising offense rate and recklessness versus negligence. So basically, if a juvenile fails to properly assess the way that their crime is handled, so basically, were they acting reckless or were they acting negligently? If they fail to answer correctly, the correct answer is recklessness, they could receive up to 5 years in prison. And this is just a quick chart. Teenagers hanging around on the streets has surpassed most other antisocial behaviors starting from approximately 2000 to 2009. Okay, so my conclusions basically, which one is more effective in preventing wrongful convictions for children, or juveniles, sorry. I would have to go and say Chicago, even though really it's not a safe assertion, just because we still have a lot of work that needs to be done within the system and improvements. The US also has a stronger network of innocence projects, so if somebody should be wrongfully convicted at a juvenile age, they have a better chance of having their case heard. So that's my research, guys.
What did you say there so it can respond if they have any questions?
I thought that you had great, you obviously had great handle of the statistics and figures covering Illinois juvenile detention and and juvenile justice issues.
Thank you.
I really liked the point on how we're in London, the juvenile is kind of given the choice to answer correctly or incorrectly about how their conduct is characterized, and that can have a huge repercussion on, on how their case is disclosed. Good job.
Thank you.
I also think I thought you did a great job as well. I'm wondering what sort of cultural factors do you think contribute to the differences between the way juvenile crime is treated in the UK and the way it's treated in the US?
I'm sorry, was the cyber factors you said?
Cultural factors.
Cultural factors. Honestly, I did a lot of research last semester, or sorry, a year ago actually, about the cultural factors. It's a very Dickensian kind of child pickpocket assumption that they operate under, stemming back from approximately the 1800s, where, 18 to 1850, where children basically were so impoverished that they resorted to pickpocketing, mugging, and then turning over the profits or anything they might have gotten to older siblings, parents, all that. So that's basically the cultural, those are the cultural factors that are at play, even though the situation has changed drastically. Pickpockets, while they're a problem in London, are not often the case anymore, whereas you guys have seen it's moved more towards violent offenses. So they're kind of operating under this kind of outdated, archaic system, but it's just modernized, I guess.
I'll also add, I thought you did a phenomenal job, and I think the research is really important, just given how increasingly juveniles are being portrayed as criminals.
Right.
Cops are going to schools to address issues that used to be addressed through things like, detention or something like that, and so there are more youth going into the criminal justice system.
Right.
And I would actually say, if you're interested in it, though I'm sure you know this already, Cook County Juvenile Detention Center welcomes volunteers.
Yes.
And it's a great place to go meet the kids who are these criminals and kind of see not only who they are, but the conditions that they're living in firsthand, which I think can be really revelatory. I didn't do that until law school, which we did well after I went to undergrad, so you are so far ahead of the game and ahead of where I was. But I would encourage you to do it.
Right, I'm starting my thesis next semester, so that's actually one of the things I had in mind for part of my writing. But thank you.
And Diana, I'll just add, of course, wonderful job. And I'm curious, in my law and psychology class, we talked about when we look at juveniles, often we're looking at male juveniles when we talk about crime. And I'm just curious if you saw any differences or you looked into gender at all.
Honestly, what I've come across in my research is that Chicago has a much more extensive database of statistics about various juvenile offenses. London, on the other hand, or anywhere in the UK for that matter, does not have quite the assembled set of statistics that we have in the US. That being said, any sort of research pertaining to gender, sex, anything like that, really, really unavailable, and if it is, it's pretty well guarded. So I haven't come across it quite yet, but hopefully I can, look into that in the future. Thank you.
Good work.
Okay. Evening, everybody. My name's Alex Dowson. Along with, and I wanted to point this out because Diana didn't, Diana, Connor, and I, who you'll hear from later, in addition to doing this research in this class,